I want to talk a little bit about what's the hardest thing about Christianity. The very hardest. What do you hate the most about Christianity? And when I get started, trust me, it's okay. You can trust me. You can be honest with me. I won't say nothing. Anyway, every one of us has had one of these thoughts at one time or another. See if you've ever thought any of these things, and it may or may not be what you hate about being a Christian the most. The number one thing most people complain about, trying and failing to stop sinning. Maybe it's having to stop doing anything and everything that's fun, or at least having to sneak around and hide to do it, or thinking you're doing good and then all of a sudden you do something stupid. Or maybe it's having to get all dressed up and go to church twice every Sunday and once on Wednesday when you'd really rather be home taking a nap or watching TV. Or maybe it's trying to stay awake during a long-winded Sunday school teacher's lesson. Or having to pretend that you're something you know you're not. Maybe it's, I'll get mail over this one. Having to pretend to like a bunch of cold-hearted, sharp-nosed, long-tongued, backstabbing hypocrites that talk about you as soon as you leave the room. Or maybe you don't like getting beat up all the time by Satan and his demons. And the last one, God not hearing and answering your prayers. Now, I'm sure everybody's felt one of those things to some degree at some time or another, but if those are the main things that you hate about being a Christian, you ain't doing it right. There's a few things that you don't understand about God, Christianity, and the Bible, and there's, for some folks, there's even a chance you might not be saved. The meanest, sneakiest, hardest things that true Christians struggle with are, now just think a little deeper. Get down behind all this stuff the devil was throwing. That stuff I was reading off to you, that's just dust that the devil throws in the air. It ain't got nothing to do with being a Christian. If you think a little bit about it, there's two things that a true Christian battles worse than anything else. If you say you don't, you just ain't realized it yet. These things make you run ahead of God, try to get ahead of Him, and do stupid stuff, or they make you too scared to step out and do anything. And they're real close related to each other. Here they are. This is the worst thing about Christianity. Having to wait on God. And if you want to get real bad, having to wait on God without any real faith in God. So it boils down to waiting, wait, and then wait some more. People that study stuff like this say that most folks spend about a third of their life waiting, and it gets aggravating. I'd rather be doing something instead of waiting, even if it's wrong. You wait when you're in line at the grocery store, at the doctor's office. You wait for a phone call you wait for your test results that shows your thyroid goobered up. You wait to graduate high school, to get accepted to college, for your first job offer. Wait for the right time to start a family. Wait for your loved ones to come to Christ. Or wait for God to bring the right man or the right woman into your life. I got 4 more, bear with me. You wait for somebody to buy your house, for your prayers to be answered, for your husband or wife to come home from a business trip, or for your oldest daughter to come back to the Lord. Waiting is the hardest part of the Christian life once you understand how God works. All that other junk I was talking about, all that trying and failing to stop sinning, don't worry about that. having to get dressed and go to church every Sunday, trying to stay awake while I'm talking, having to pretend you're something you're not. That ain't it. That's over there somewhere. When you first get saved, if you've done it right, you want to go out and set the world on fire. I mean, you're ready, buddy. You want to do something. You want to see miracles. You want to see the sick healed, the dead raised, you know, stuff like that. Then you realize, a few days later, there ain't a whole lot changed. Not a whole lot has really changed, and it's you still feel an awful lot like the same old person, and it's because you're a newborn baby stuck in a body that's still full of all kind of sinful desires and emotions. It's almost enough to make you wonder if you're really saved at all. And God says to wait. It'll get better as you grow. But it'll take time, trust, and faith. Now, you know that cartoon buzzard sitting up on a limb? Turns over that over and says, "Patience, my hind end, I'm going to go kill something." You know. But when you're waiting, it can feel like giving up. It feels like giving up. But waiting is not giving up. When you get your eyes off God and focus on what's going on that's got you all in an uproar, it's easy to throw your hands up. It's easy to despair and sink like old Peter did when he was walking on the water. And when you don't wait patiently on the Lord, it shows how little you really understand about God, the Bible, or how little you know about the Lord. And the truth is, waiting is nothing but getting yourself out of the way so God can show out. It ain't giving up. It's the most worthwhile, effective, and productive thing you could possibly do. All right. And just for you folks that think that when you get to heaven, all that waiting junk's going to be over, everything's going to be roses. Let me read you something out of Revelation 6, starting with verse 9. And when he had opened the fifth seal, now these folks are in heaven. They're in heaven. And when he had opened the fifth seal, I saw under the altar the souls of them that were slain for the word of God and for the testimony which they held. And they cried with a loud voice, saying, "How long, O Lord, holy and true, dost thou not judge and avenge our blood on them that dwell on the earth?" And they're in heaven. Jesus, when he was standing there getting in that monkey trial, he waited. He patiently waited, and he held his tongue. When Jesus was standing there, he waited on God. He did not argue with them folks. He didn't fight back, even though he knew. And then when I realized this kind of amazed me. When he was standing there getting abused and lied on and all that stuff, he knew. All he had to do was say, "Hey, Dad, I need them 12 legions of angels down here to rescue me and destroy this world, the whole world." That's in Matthew 26:53. "Thinkest thou that I cannot now pray to my Father, and he shall presently give me more than 12 legions of angels?" One angel is pretty bad by itself. If you think it's easy to wait patiently, to keep your mouth shut, and to not fight back when people's throwing around all kind of false accusations, you ain't got a Facebook account. No, wait a minute. It's only because it ain't happened to you lately. You can see some funny stuff on there. But anyway, James, old James, my whole lesson's on James 5:7 through 11. James has got some advice for us about waiting on God. You know, James was the brother of Jesus. And after he didn't believe Jesus was the Messiah until later. But anyway, he didn't even claim to be his brother, by the way. He got a little something to say about waiting on God. I'm going to read it and then we'll go through it here a little bit. Try to keep everybody awake long enough. But anyway, James 5, verse 7, be patient. Oh, before I get too far, don't ever pray for patience. My nephew prayed for patience and he got twin girls. Be patient, therefore, brethren, unto the coming of the Lord. Behold, the husbandman, farmer, waiteth for the precious fruit of the earth, and hath long patience for it, until he receive the early and latter rain. Be ye also patient. Establish your hearts, for the coming of the Lord draweth nigh. Grudge not one against another, brethren, lest ye be condemned. Behold, the judge standeth before the door. Take my brethren the prophets who have spoken in the name of the Lord for an example of suffering, affliction, and of patience. Behold, we count them happy which endure. Ye have heard of the patience of Job, and have seen the end of the Lord, that the Lord is very pitiful and of tender mercy. Now, the folks that James was writing to was Christians in the first century after the resurrection. They were poor. Most of them were struggling, and they were scattered all across that Roman Empire. Most of them had been abused, lied to, misused by wealthy landowners who overworked them and then stole their wages and walked away laughing. And they were at the mercy of rich men who got away with murder, and there's absolutely nothing they could do about it. Nothing. And it got worse, but when he was writing to them, that's what was going on. So what are Christians supposed to do when they get cheated? What are you supposed to do? How are you supposed to act when you're mistreated? How are you supposed to keep your faith alive when the hard times just keep coming and just keep coming and getting worse and worse? How are you supposed to keep your faith alive? Waiting don't come easy. It's not only difficult, sometimes it feels like it's impossible. I want things to happen my way on my schedule. But God don't operate on my schedule. And when you expect Him to, all you're doing is setting yourself up for disappointment. Waiting on God means going without answers to your prayers. Wondering why wicked folks seem to prosper and us Christians, we just get more miserable and more miserable. It means having your desires delayed and your hope deferred. Now, that's the way we look at it, but God's got a different way of looking at it. He's got a plan, and His schedule is perfect. It's holy because He's perfect and holy. Psalm 18:30 says, as for God, His way is perfect. Now, as soon as you figure out and fully realize that your way is not perfect and God's way is perfect, it's a little easier to start trusting what He's doing and when He does it, even if it don't make any sense to you at all. Isaiah 40 verse 31 says, but they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint. God's promise is crystal clear. If you can have enough faith and enough patience to wait on Him, He will renew your strength. But I want it now. I want it all, and I want it now. One reason waiting on God is so hard, we live in a world that demands instant gratification of every one of our desires. I mean instant, boom. You go flip a switch on the wall and the light comes on. You turn a key, you got instant transportation. You sit on your couch and push a button on the remote, instant entertainment. But, and it's true, now it's true, that sometimes God answers your prayers as soon as you pray. Sometimes He even answers them before you ask Him because He knows what you need. Now that's sometimes. And when He does, He does that, it helps build your faith and helps build your confidence in Him. Then sometimes God waits a while before He answers to test your faith. And that can make you squirm and struggle a little bit. You might even start wondering if God's even listening to you. According to Philippians, though, waiting on God shouldn't make you worry. It shouldn't. It does. Sometimes you can't help yourself, but it shouldn't. Philippians 4 verse 6. Be careful for nothing. That's a mouthful. Be careful for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving. Let your request be made known unto God. Now the King James Version says be careful for nothing. That's not what we call it anymore, but that's okay. That means you don't have to worry about nothing.
Carefree.
Okay, that's exactly right. Just take it to God in prayer. And when you worry about it, it means you ain't got much faith. That's what that means. Matthew 8:26 says, and He saith unto them, why are ye fearful, O ye of little faith? Then He arose and rebuked the winds and the sea, and there was a great calm. Now, in spite of all that, I want it now, and not knowing enough about God to know His ways perfect, waiting on God can keep you from doing something stupid. Let's talk about a fella that he was in a hurry. He wanted it now, and he did something stupid. He did two things stupid. Old Abraham was 75 years old when God came walking by his tent and made a couple of promises to him. God promised him that he'd be a father of a great nation, his seed would be as the sand, all kind of stuff. And him 75 years old. He promised him a son that he would use to fulfill his promises to him. Now, I'm close to 75 years old, and I know what I'd think if somebody told me I was going to have another kid and he'd be the father of a great nation and all my descendants would be like the sand of the sea, and me 75 years old. And then nothing happened. Nothing. He just told him to get out of where he was living and move somewhere else. Now, it didn't happen overnight. Abraham and Sarah tried, and they tried. Then they waited, and then they waited for 25 years. 25 years. And him 75 years old. Genesis 2:21 verse 5 says he was 100 years old and Sarah was 90 when Isaac was born. I've seen a bunch of 90-year-old women. I'll tell you a story about me tuning the piano one time, see, but that's another story. Abram and Sarah, they got tired of waiting, so they come up with their own plan to help God. They're going to help God keep His promise. Their first plan was to name Abraham's, I guess you call it servant, Eliezer, the heir of Abraham's house. That's in Genesis 15 verses 2 and 3. Another one, another harebrained idea of theirs was to have Abraham take Sarah's slave girl, Hagar, and have a child through her, which he did. That's in Genesis 16 verses 1 and 2. Now, God rejected their plans. And He told Abraham and Sarah, about 25 years later, that there would be a literal, miraculous fulfillment of His promises. I would say, Ann, that if Sarah was 90 years old when she had Isaac, that her makeup probably got messed up. What do you
I'd
think?
say so. But 90 then wasn't like 90 now, I don't think.
It's still...
That's still a long time.
All right. Now we got, that's a pretty miraculous promise that He made to Abraham. I could understand if Abraham didn't believe it. He did believe it, but he didn't wait. He didn't have enough patience. Now God promised us some miraculous stuff too. Some stuff that's at least as miraculous as what he promised Abraham. But they're just as hard to believe too, because they don't come overnight either. You got to wait on them. Now, I'm going to read through. I went through and did a little search on what has God promised us. And I found 12 things. There's a bunch. There's a bunch. But here, I'm going to read these 12 things and see if there's any of them that you've ever felt like, that's just a crock. Okay? He's promised these 12 promises for us Christians to claim. He's promised His presence. I will never leave thee. That's Hebrews 13:5. He's promised His protection for us. I am thy shield. That's Genesis 15 verse 1. He's promised His power. I will strengthen thee. That's Isaiah 41:10. He's promised His provision. I will help thee. Isaiah 41:10. He's promised to lead us and guide us. It's John 10 verse 4. He's promised rest. Matthew 11:28. Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden. He's promised to cleanse us of our sins. I've got a mirror. I know better than that. He's promised to get all the sin out of my life. That's probably one of the hardest ones, because I know what's in me. Anyway, He's promised that if we confess our sins, He's faithful and just to forgive us and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. We'll do a lesson on that sometime. That don't mean what you think. Anyway, He's promised His goodness for us. No good thing will He withhold from them that walk uprightly. Psalm 84. He has promised to guide us if we are humble before Him. The meek will He guide. That's Psalm 25. And then He's promised that His plan is wise, and His plan's got us in mind. Romans 8:28. All things work together for good to them that love God. That's Romans 8:28. Now, I know you're just about to die for me to tell you the 3 ways that James says that you wait on the Lord. Right? You got to realize first that God is in complete control when your lying eyes are telling you that He's not. Sometimes it don't look like it. But God is in complete control. He's in complete, total, independent control over every single atom in this entire universe. He is the one that holds it all together. He controls every single creature, every event, and every circumstance in history. The Holocaust, God was in control. Civil War, God was in control. And I'm sure the folks that was getting shot at and killed, and the folks that was getting sent to gas chambers, it didn't look like God was in control. But He was. He is not subject to any other power. He's not influenced by any other power. He is absolutely independent. God does what He wants the way He wants to. And there ain't nothing can stop Him. Nothing. Isaiah 46:10. That pretty much says that I'm going to do what I want. You can't stop me. It's, I make known the end from the beginning, from ancient times, what is still to come. I say, my purpose will stand, and I will do all that I please. That sounds pretty clear to me. Once you understand that it doesn't matter what it looks like to you, God's got this whole ball of wax under control. He's got a plan for it. You're in that plan, And God knows your situation. He knows you. He knows where you're at. He knows what you're doing. He knows what He's going to do for you. And it ain't easy. He does care for your needs. And He is good all the way to the end. But Proverbs 13 verse 12 does say, hope deferred makes the heart sick, but a longing fulfilled is a tree of life. James says to learn to wait on the Lord. Waiting don't come easy for most of us. Nobody wants to wait when you got somebody in the hospital dying. They don't want to wait when they've got a situation that desperately needs God's help. Don't want to wait when you've been cheated, lied on, talked about, misused. But that's what you're supposed to do. Life ain't fair. When all that unfairness happens, you want to holler, I didn't sign up for this. This ain't me. This ain't. What do you do? What are you supposed to do? All right. When you go through what James is saying here, there's three ways that you're to wait. And the first one, like I said, is to realize that God's in control. And then you got to act like a farmer. Wait expectantly, like a farmer. James 5 verse 7, be patient then, brother, until the Lord's coming. See how the farmer waits for the land to yield its valuable crop, and how patient he is for the autumn and spring rains. You too be patient and stand firm, because the Lord's coming is near. Now, farming, that's a noble profession. We wouldn't have nothing to eat if farmers didn't raise crops and tend to animals. Farming is hard work. That's why most folks don't like to do it nowadays. A farmer has got to be an accountant, a banker, a business executive, and a computer expert on top of knowing how to raise all that stuff. And a farmer's got to have plenty of patience. If he ain't got patience, he'll lose his shirt. Now, King James translated that autumn and spring as early and latter rains. James wants you to think about the farmer that waits for early rain in the fall and the latter rain in the spring. He digs the ground, plows the ground, he plants the seed, pulls all the weeds, and then he waits. That's all he can do. That's all he can do. He can't make the rain come any quicker. But he knows if he waits, it will eventually come. That's an ugly word, that eventually. It means not today. It means maybe not tomorrow. Maybe not next week. Maybe not next month. Maybe not next year. But eventually means that what you're waiting on is going to happen. So we get down to long suffering. When James says the first words in verse 7, be patient, everywhere else in the Bible that word they translated be patient shows up, they translated long suffering. Now nobody wants to suffer long. We don't want any part of long suffering. We're all in favor of short suffering.
Yes.
I like short suffering.
Yeah.
That long suffering.
Done is all is better.
That long suffering for somebody else.
Yeah.
Now a farmer, he puts up with drought. He suffers insects, hailstorms, deer eating your garden. He might get attacked by people stealing your watermelons or rustling your cows. But the farmer keeps going because he knows that rain's going to come eventually. The drought can't last forever, and the latter rains will come at last. Now that phrase, stand fast, means be immovable. That means you got to be somebody who is so certain that what's going to happen in the future that he can't be moved by the troubles of what's going on right now. You got to keep in mind that Jesus is coming again.
Yes.
He is coming again, and he's going to be mad. But anyway, but the Bible says even more than that. Verse 8 says, the Lord's coming is near. One translation, the CEV translation, I guess, gives the exact meaning of the text. It says, be like those farmers and don't give up. The Lord will soon be here. Now, I read the story when I was doing this lesson. Said there's a businessman who had to run an errand at his office, and he took his young son along with him, and he asked the boy to sit on the steps and wait while he went inside to do this little whatever it was. But he got so sidetracked with his business that he forgot about his son waiting outside. And he went out the building by a different door, and he went home by himself. And when the family sat down to eat dinner, the boy wasn't there. So his mama got real anxious, I'd say, started to wonder where he was, and then the dad remembered where he left his son. So he rushed back to where he worked, and he found his son still sitting on them steps, tired and hungry, waiting just like he'd been told to. And the kid said, I knew you'd come, Father. You said you would. That's how you got it. That's how you got to think about this. Jesus is coming, and it is soon. 2,000, a little more than 2,000 years has passed since Jesus went up into heaven. And some of us feel like that boy. We're tired and we're hungry. Well, I wonder why Jesus ain't come back yet. Maybe he's forgot us. Maybe he got busy, just forgot all about us. Maybe he's made some other plans. Now, if you feel like that little boy, take heart. It's been a long time from our point of view, but it ain't been no time at all from heaven's perspective. Matter of fact, he ain't been gone but 2 days. 2 Peter 3 verse 8, the days of 1,000 years. Anyway, he said he would come back, and he will. Don't get scared, just keep believing. He ain't forgot us. He knows what you're going through, and he ain't forgot you. So, what are we supposed to do during the hard times? Some folks think that we're in hard times now. You ain't seen nothing. You ain't seen nothing yet. James, the 9th verse of James chapter 5 says, grudge not one against another, brethren, lest ye be condemned. Behold, the judge standeth before the door. Now, if you put grudge not in plain English of today, it means watch your mouth. That's what it means. Watch your mouth when you're tired. That's me. Watch your mouth when you're scared. Watch your mouth when you're mad. When you're backed into a corner. When your life's crashing down around you. When your friends betray you. When you're attacked unfairly. When you're harassed. When you're lied to. When you're lied about. And when your whole world turns upside down. Watch your mouth. Grudge not. What do you do then when you've just about had enough and you don't feel like taking no more? I'm just about to blow. Well, first, your spirit, here's an old word for you, your spirit gets vexed, that's first. And you sigh inwardly. Then you sigh outwardly. And then you start to grumble against your brothers and sisters in the Lord. They got more money. Their marriage is more happy than mine. Their kids are perfect. They don't treat me right. One of them looked at me the wrong way. They don't respect me. On and on. On and on and on. Oh no. Anyway, I'll tell you a story about that sometime, about my brother. You could tell when his feelings was hurt, us Bledsoes are famous. We wear our feelings right here. If somebody would say something, I ain't gonna call his name, he's my brother. He's dead, bless his heart. He'd start doing this and start scratching his shoulder. It's Anyway, that's how you'd know he was in that kind of shape. When you're tired and scared and mad, it's easy to get your feelings on your shoulder. Around the people you love the most. If you're walking down the road and a stranger says something ugly to you, if you're like me, you'll think, what an idiot, and laugh at him and go on. But you let your husband or your wife say or do something when you're stressed, and you let your kids get on you one last nerve. Let your friends at church not treat you the way you think they ought to. What happens then? You blow your top. You lose your cool. You say something stupid. And old James, he says, don't do it. He says, let your love cover their multitude of sins. And there's plenty of them. You can look around and you can find filth laying everywhere in the church. Not the filth that you cleaned up, Sister Diane. I'm just, you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. 1 Peter 4:8 says, and above all things have fervent charity among yourselves, for charity shall cover a multitude of sins. And there's a multitude of sins that need covering. It's not the big stuff that trips you up, it's the little things. You know, when you get sand in your shoe, or somebody's got a little something that they do over and over, it just bugs the fire out of you. Smacking their lips or whistling through their teeth, something like the joke that wasn't really a joke, the way they look at you. And that all stays in your mind. And if you go around looking for something to grumble about, you can find plenty. Even your best friend's going to let you down. Mm-hmm. Your wife or your husband's going to get on your nerves. Mm-hmm. And the kids, well, they're still alive. They can drive you crazy. But remember this, the nitpickers, the criticizers, and the fault finders will be found out. This fella here, the spiritual vultures will be exposed, and the critic is going to get criticized. The judger is going to get judged. What judge? Well, he says the judge is standing at the door. Who's he talking about? The same fellow that John was talking about in Revelation 3:20. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If any man hear my voice and open the door, I will come into him and will sup with him, and he with me. James is talking about his brother, Jesus. Now, we've all seen, I hope all of us have seen, I have time to, that painting of Christ knocking on the door to your heart, and they make a big deal about there not being no doorknob on the outside. It can open and all that stuff. You know, it's a real nice picture about Jesus wanting to enter in to your heart and have fellowship with you. Now, James gives us the other side of that coin. All right? Christ is standing at the door of the nitpickers, the criticizers, the grumblers, and the fault finders. He's standing at the door of their heart, ready to come in and judge the judgers. He'll expose the critical spirit. He'll expose your bitter words and all that inward sighs that nobody else even noticed. Now, he ain't doing it to be mean, okay? He's doing it to get you to repent of it, but that's another story. Maybe that's what John meant in 1 John 2:28 when he said, we're supposed to stay close enough to Jesus so that when he comes back, we don't have to be ashamed. Maybe that's what he meant. 1 John 2:28. And now, little children, abide in him, that when he shall appear, we may have confidence and not be ashamed before him at his coming. Now, most Christians I know, they like to think of the second coming of Jesus as our blessed hope, which it is, but there's more to it than that. They overlook the fact that the second coming of Christ leads to a period of examination and judging for every Christian. The judgment seat of Christ when you get to standing before it, the worthless things that we've done, the wood, hay, and the stubble, that's all going to be burned up. Now that ain't going to be pleasant, because most of us have more wood, hay, and stubble in our life than we think.
Yes.
Now, when hard times hit, we're supposed to wait expectantly and graciously, but James has got one more challenge in addition to waiting patiently. Expectantly and graciously. He wants you to wait patiently. James 5 verse 10. Take my brethren the prophets who have spoken in the name of the Lord for an example of suffering and affliction and of patience. Behold, we count them happy which endure. You have heard of the patience of Job and have seen the end of the Lord, but the Lord is very pitiful and of tender mercy. Sometimes victory looks like barely surviving. Been there and done that. And surviving just by the skin of your teeth looks like victory. Sometimes the only thing you can do is just hunker down and hang on. That's why God blesses people that persevere. Every time I say that word, I think of, we must endeavor to persevere. Y'all seen that movie. Anyway, the Lord honors those that keep believing when it'd be so much easier just to walk away. The high cost of faithfulness to the Lord. We think we got it rough. Now read Hebrews 11, starting with verse 35. We've got it pretty good. Women received their dead raised to life again, and others were tortured, not accepting deliverance that they might obtain a better resurrection, and others had trial of cruel mockings and scourgings. Yea, moreover of bonds and imprisonment. They were stoned. They were sawn asunder, were tempted, were slain with the sword. They wandered about in sheepskins and goatskins, being destitute, afflicted, tormented, of whom the world was not worthy. They wandered in deserts and in mountains and in dens and caves of the earth. This stuff, by the way, is going on today. Not so much in Sell Creek, but it's going on all over in other places in the world. Folks are having to endure this kind of stuff. Now, how did them prophets survive? How did Job survive? How are you going to survive when that starts here? They survived because they knew who God was. Everything in your life, everything comes down to one question. What do you believe about God? What sort of God is He? How has He revealed Himself in the Bible? You might learn your religion in the sunshine, but you discover and realize your religion at the darkest midnight of your life. Job ended up with more than he started with, but he had to go through a terrible trial to get it. Them prophets suffered for the name of the Lord. And sometimes they got their reward in this life, sometimes they have to wait. Now, like I said, just surviving looks a lot like victory. James didn't say there's no easy way out of having to wait and getting disappointed. He didn't say there's no easy way to get out of your troubles. He doesn't say, pray this prayer and send me $5 and I'll send you this prayer cloth. He didn't say that. He said, pray this. He didn't say, pray this prayer and your problems will go away. He said, life ain't fair. He said, sometimes there ain't nothing you can do about it. He did say, but you can control how you respond to it. Life ain't fair, but if you believe that God is in fact in control of everything, and that your enemies cannot do anything to you without His permission, and that the Lord is full of compassion, mercy, and love for you, and Jesus is coming back. If you really believe all that, when all of these troubles and trials and temptations come, you'll be able to find a way to just hang on, hunker down. You won't be grumbling, you won't be cussing and complaining about how everybody's treating you. You stand firm by the grace that God gives you. Now, if you're waiting on God right now for something, what are you supposed to do? Well, don't complain. Don't complain to God. Don't panic. Don't do like Abraham. Don't take matters in your own hands. Just hang on one day at a time. Do your duty each day the way God shows you how to do it. And surrender your life to the Lord. Thy will be done. Now the issue is God, not you. When you wait on the Lord, you're saying, I know God is going to resolve this situation eventually. I don't know how. I don't know when. I don't know if I'm going to like it. I don't know if I'm not going to like it. I don't know how He's going to do it, but I'm not giving up. I'm waiting on Him. When the Lord's plans are finally made clear and you're able to see the big picture, when He takes that dark glass out from between us, you'll be glad you didn't cut and run. So back to the first question I asked you, what's the worst thing about being a Christian? It ain't trying and failing to stop sinning. It ain't that. The only one that brings that up is the devil. It ain't having to give up everything that's fun, nor sneaking and hiding to do it. It ain't having to get dressed up and go to church twice every Sunday and then on Wednesday night when you really want to be home taking a nap. It ain't that. It ain't trying to stay awake anyway, I'm going to skip that one. It ain't having to pretend you're something that you know you're not. It ain't having to play like you actually like that bunch of cold-hearted, sharp-nosed, long-tongued, backstabbing hypocrites that talk about you as soon as you leave the room. It ain't even constantly getting beat up by Satan and his demons. And it ain't even God not hearing and answering your prayers. Don't focus on none of that foolishness. That's foolishness. That's the way the devil wants you to see Christianity. All you got to do is, well, it sounds like a cliche, okay? Relax. Relax. You're in God's hands. That's all you got to do. Well, I appreciate y'all putting up with me. I'll see you next week. Thank you very much.
Okay.